The shocking truth. Abraham wasn't Jewish, yet kept God's Sabbath. You've been told the Sabbath is just for Jews. But what if I told you the first man in the Bible who is proven to keep God's commandments wasn't even Jewish? And what if I told you that this very man walked in obedience to the holy Sabbath long before there was ever a nation of Israel? Brace yourself. This truth will shatter traditions and shake the foundations of every excuse to reject the Sabbath. Scene 1. The lie unveiled. The Sabbath is Jewish. It's the most repeated lie in modern Christianity. The Sabbath is for the Jews. But that falsehood collapses when you realize that Abraham, the father of the faithful, kept God's law centuries before a single Jew existed. Genesis 26:5 KJV. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. How could Abraham keep God's commandments if they weren't known until Sinai? The answer is terrifying to Sunday worshippers. God's law existed long before Sinai, and yes, that includes the seventh-day Sabbath. Scene 2. Abraham was not Jewish. The word Jew comes from Judah, one of the sons of Jacob, who was the grandson of Abraham. Abraham was a Hebrew, Genesis 14:13, but not a Jew. The Jewish nation didn't even exist yet. So if the Sabbath was only for Jews, why did Abraham, a non-Jew, obey God's commandments? Because the Sabbath was never Jewish. It was divine. Scene 3. Abraham knew the law of God. Some say God's law didn't exist before Sinai, but the Bible contradicts that. Cain knew it was wrong to murder. Noah knew what animals were clean and unclean. Sodom was judged for abominable sins. How can there be judgment without law? Romans chapter 4:15, KJV. For where no law is, there is no transgression. If Abraham obeyed God's commandments, the law had to exist, and with it, the Sabbath command. Scene 4. Why this truth destroys modern Sunday worship arguments. If the Sabbath was only given to Israel, then Abraham should have been exempt. But Scripture says he was faithful in obedience, walking in the law of God, even without it being written on stone. This truth proves that the law of God was known before Moses. The Sabbath was part of that law. The Sabbath is not a Jewish invention. It's a creation command. Scene 5. Jesus and Abraham, the same commandments. Jesus said something profound in John chapter 8:39. If ye were Abraham's children, ye would do the works of Abraham. What were Abraham's works? Obedience, faith, law-keeping. So if you claim to be a child of Abraham but reject the Sabbath, Jesus says, you are not doing Abraham's works. Scene 6. The final verdict. Truth or tradition? If Abraham, before Israel existed, kept God's commandments, and if the Sabbath is part of God's commandments, then the Sabbath is not Jewish. It is eternal, moral, and binding for all mankind. To reject the Sabbath is not just rejecting a day, it's rejecting the very path of Abraham, the father of all who are faithful.